When I was working for Disney TV Animation in the 1980s, somebody gave me a stack of copies of Peter Pan artwork from when they were doing the original Disney production. And within it, there was something in particular that I saw that blew me away. Loving Disney history, I didn't know about this part of Disney history. But I want to show you some of these things because they're really cool. This is a size comparison. Size comparison model sheets, like this one of the Darling family, show multiple characters next to each other and correct relative heights so the proportions would always remain consistent. Here's another one. This has Peter Pan, the Darling children, and the Lost Boys. And then with every character, particularly the main characters, they would show them in various different poses. So here's Peter Pan in a bunch of them. In general, model sheets are reference drawings that show exactly how a character should look, including various angles, expressions, and poses, so that their look would stay consistent throughout the film. And here's the mermaids, and there's a production number on there, 2074. I'll tell you a little bit about that in a little bit. And then also it says, OK, Ham. That was Hamilton Luske, who was one of the directors of Peter Pan. Tinkerbell wasn't only designed by Marc Davis, who was my friend and a wonderful animator, but Marc also animated her. I remember Marc telling me that this was the first time that you would see Tinkerbell as a character with a face and everything. Peter Pan had been a stage production before that, and in all those productions, she was this just light that would go across the stage. Here's Wendy. Back when I was at Disney, even though we were television animation, the artist would sometimes request various materials from the classic theatrical animation for reference or just to study, like these copies. And often when they were done, they would just throw them out. But a lot of people knew how much I loved learning about the history of Disney, and they would give them to me rather than trash them, and I still have all of it. This one's interesting because it's always John and Michael, and this one says Mike. I don't think they ever referred to him as Mike, but here's Mike. So cute. Now here's the Lost Boys. Did you know that all the Lost Boys had names? Disney named them based on their costumes, but in the original play of Peter Pan, there was Slightly, Toodles, Nibs, and Curly. There's so much character in those expressions, isn't there? Then there was the first twin and the second twin, who J.M. Barrie wrote cannot be described because we should probably be describing the wrong one. There's Cubby in his bear cub outfit. Did you know that he was named Cubby? Then we have the Indians, which was the acceptable term in those days, now Native Americans. And here's the chief. And do you know his name? If you look on this model sheet, they named him Great Big Little White Panther. In the original play, he was just Great Big Little Panther. And of course, Captain Hook, with lots of different expressions. And here's Smee. It says temporary rough sheet. It's pretty close to how he ended up in the movie. And of course, the pirates. Did you know that the pirates all had names as well? In this model sheet, you can see their names, and those are the names from the original play. There's Turk, and Mullins, Bill Jukes, Black Murphy, and there's Starkey, and up at the top is Skylights with his concertina. Now, this is really neat. This is the entire show, line by line, camera angle by camera angle. And every single line that you see between the lines is a different camera shot. Over at the left, it shows which person animated each scene. And I want to show you something. Before I show you this, let me show you, this was also in the whole packet, Captain Hook. I'm not real good at flipping it, but this is the animation frame by frame.
Well, get on with it.
I marked it down in here where you could see this scene. So take a look at this. So up at the top is production 2074, the production title. And this artwork is in sequence number 11. And this is scene 53. So it's telling me this was animated by the great Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnston. But the thing is, and I'll show you in a second, this was originally going to have both Hook and Smee in the scene. And it says screen footage, and that 5-01 means that this one scene is going to be 5 feet and 1 frame. And over at the right, it says close up, Hook and Smee, and Hook says, get on with it. Then sweetly, continue, my dear. Frank animated Hook, and Ollie would have animated Smee.
Well, get on with it. Continue, my dear.
Then the next camera shot, or the next scene, was animated by Marc Davis and Frank Thomas. And the reason for that is because Marc was the primary animator for Tinker Bell, and Frank Thomas was on Captain Hook, and they're both in the same shot. I also find it interesting that they showed Tink's dialogue, "You mustn't harm Peter," even though it was never spoken, it was only communicated through bells.
I mustn't harm Peter.
There's so much history that could be learned from going through these materials. That's why it's fun for me to share them with you, too. Look how thick this is for the whole movie. I think it's so cool. But this is what I saw and was really blown away. Because the first thing I saw was it has a different production number. It has production 1016 on it. These were some suggestions for Indians, and they look very different than the final film. But then I looked at the bottom, and there's a date, September 12th, 1940. So why was there a different production number, and how come it said 1940? You see, Peter Pan was released in 1953. In 1940, Pinocchio had just come out, and that was only the second animated feature that Walt Disney did, the first being Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, which was 1937. But even that early, development had started on a version of Peter Pan, and Walt later said in a magazine article that he put Peter Pan on hold because he didn't feel animation was at a level yet where he could do it justice. These images are all from the early 1940 ideas. You know, after I learned about this early development, I even discovered an audio tape from 1942 that had a narrated demo for the story with some ideas for songs too. So quite a bit of work was done, and the final version definitely drew inspiration from some of these early ideas. And I saved this one of Nana for last because this one really shows you just how similar this character was to how it ended up in the screen in 1953. And how this really influenced that final version. In fact, if you look at the bottom left, somebody handwrote 2074. That was the production number of the final version of Peter Pan.